Warriors head coach Steve Kerr had his exit interview today, and boy, did he say a lot. We're going to break all that down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs, where I posted a tweet that's pinned at the top, and I'm going to start addressing it soon. It's all about trade proposals. So, folks, if you follow the program on Twitter, the very first tweet at the top elicits your engagement. Do you have any trade proposals? Do you have any ideas for who the Warriors should trade? We're reading them. We're reading all of them. And if it's plausible, and what I mean by plausibility is it needs to be realistic. Don't shoot for the moon for a player that you really want that the Warriors have no chance of getting. And obviously the salary cap needs to come into play. So again, if it's within the realm of reality, we'll totally address it. And obviously we're going to start covering trade proposals ourselves here soon. But the wound is still so fresh. There's still answers that need to be found just in terms of what happened this year, what happened in the Western Conference semifinals, and what's next. And today, Warriors head coach Steve Kerr took to the podium for his exit interview. And there's a lot of nuggets that came out of that. And that's what today's show is going to be. I'm going to play 7 sound bites from Steve Kerr, where he discussed a lot, and there's a lot to break down. The first sound is Steve Kerr talking about how important general manager, president of operations, Bob Myers is. Right now, Bob Myers' status is uncertain. Connor Letourneau reported in his San Francisco Chronicle piece this morning that Myers is debating coming back, partly due to time spent with family. Although, if that was really important, I don't understand why he's at the draft combine. But look, my sources, again, have told me repeatedly that this is coming down to money. If Joe Lacob gives Bob Myers the money that shows that he is the number one executive in the NBA, which he has proven he is based off the 4 titles in 8 years. I guess now it's 9 years, but in an 8-year span, they did win 4 championships, 6 Western Conference titles. And Bob Myers wants to be the top paid executive in the NBA. Pay the man. He's earned it. So Steve Kerr thankfully agrees because something's telling me more and more that Steve Kerr is wielding an incredible amount of power with the Warriors. I'm not confirming that. That is just the impression I'm getting. But regardless, it's not a bad thing that Steve Kerr wants Myers back. Again, I've been emphasizing in this program repeatedly, tomorrow's show will be Bob Myers' day. I'm going to dedicate tomorrow's program, unless something in terms of breaking news occurs that I have to cover. Then if that happens, I'll cover it. But otherwise, I'm going to dedicate tomorrow's show to Bob Myers. I'm going to explain to you why I value him tremendously, why I think he is the brains, the head of this operation, why there's no dynasty without him. And Steve Kerr, in this instance, agrees that there's no dynasty moving forward without Bob Myers. Here's Warriors head coach Steve Kerr talking about the general manager, Bob Myers.
Bob is such an important part of our organization, not only as one of the faces of the organization out there in the NBA world, meeting with other executives and agents and, representing us in that regard, but also with his relationships with our players. He's got such credibility with our guys. There's so much history there, the continuity, that exists between Bob and the older players means that he can have those difficult conversations, and sometimes even during games, which is pretty rare, but something that has been a huge help for me. Bob and I have a great friendship, a great working relationship, and I absolutely hope he comes back. But it's also a case where I want what's best for Bob, and if he decides that he's going to leave, of course I'm going to support him 100%, and we will remain friends for a long time. And I would miss him, but I support him regardless of what he does.
And that's Warriors head coach Steve Kerr, again, talking about his relationship with Bob Myers. And look, that's the tone of that answer is not exactly positive. That sounds like a head coach saying goodbye to his GM, and I really hope that is not the case. Again, tomorrow's show will be dedicated to Bob Myers because I feel like an entire 30 minutes needs to be spent explaining to a lot of members of Dub Nation why Bob Myers is so important. And Bob Myers is about to be an unrestricted free agent, which is incredibly concerning. And it's agenda item number one for the Golden State Warriors, in my humble opinion, in terms of what to do next. Now, the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr, has his own interesting contract situation. He's officially now a lame duck coach. And thankfully, he was asked about that today. And here's Steve Kerr talking about both Bob Myers' contract situation and his own. Here's Kerr.
You have 1 year left on your contract, and typically in sports, this is about the time when the two sides start talking about extensions and so forth. So first question would be, have those discussions started at all? And the second question would be, how much longer would you like to coach? Are you a lifer or what?
Every coach says he's not a lifer, and then he turns into a lifer. That's what I've found. Our organization has a lot to sort through this summer, and my contract situation is not, nor should it be, at the top of the list. Right now, Bob's contract situation is number one because that influences a lot of the player decisions that have to be made, contracts, draft, free agency. So, we will get to my stuff whenever that happens, and I'm in no rush for that. I love coaching. I love coaching these players. I love coaching the Warriors. Love living in the Bay. But I'm also in the NBA, and all you have to do is look at your phone every day and see the next Hall of Fame coach that's fired. It's insane. I've never seen the league like this. I'm under no illusions that I have a lifetime job here or something like that. But I love what I do, and I hope to be coaching here for a long time. But you never know how things work out, so we'll see.
Now, in the same way that the tone of his answer previously was a little foreboding, in the sense that he didn't sound super confident Bob Myers is going to come back. Myers is a family man, but again, Bob Myers is from Danville, California. Went to Monte Vista. He's a local, and so if he's going to continue being an executive in the NBA, this is where you're going to be close to your family. Also, for someone who sorely misses his family, Myers will be speaking to the press next week for his exit interview. Again, the reason being that he's currently scouting prospects for the draft. The Warriors own the 19th pick, and he's doing his job. And again, if Bob Myers was ready to move on, I don't think he would be scouting prospective draft picks for the Golden State Warriors right now. I don't think he would still be talking to the press for an exit interview next week if he wasn't planning on staying. Look, and my dear friend Connor Latrono wrote in that same profile piece on Bob Myers, a fantastic piece today, that sources have told the Chronicle a lot of the decision is coming down to whether or not Bob Myers wants to spend more time with his family. I don't dispute that as being one of the reasons, but my sources have told me that it's coming down to money. And in that same article, it states that Joe Lacob has made 2 offers to Bob Myers, which is true. Lacob, again, he's the one who said that. It has been confirmed, but it's also been confirmed that those offers do not make Bob Myers the highest paid executive. Offer the man his money, keep Bob Myers here, because if Bob Myers leaves, again, the dynasty's over. You're going to still have Stephen Curry. You're going to still have Klay Thompson for at least another year. Draymond Green's probably gone. And which leads to the next quote when we come back. And that's Steve Kerr talking about Draymond Green. Now, I'm also happy that Kerr talked about his own contract status. The lame duck thing is very rare. Mike D'Antoni, I believe, in last time he was coaching, this might have been close to 10 years ago? Actually, maybe a little less, when he was coaching the Rockets. So about 5 years ago. He was a lame duck coach there. And he was gone after that. It's a weird situation when a head coach becomes a lame duck. And I was trying to think back, did a little research in terms of what other head coaches in the NBA have played out their contract. Because in most cases, when a head coach becomes a lame duck, either they're fired or they're given an extension. And as Steve Kerr said right there, that has not been discussed yet. He's also very aware of the coaching landscape and how precarious job security is in his position. I personally have felt that until this year, Steve Kerr has done an exemplary job, but he hasn't proven to me he can develop players, and he hasn't proven to me he can adjust when things start going wrong. I mean, to me, there's no excuse for the multitude of very poor decisions that Kerr made this year, whether it was playing the two-way players over Kuminga and Moody all season long, whether it was his refusal to develop James Wiseman, resulting in the team losing the number 1 pick altogether for him. It's the defense completely collapsing this year. He does also sign off on personnel decisions. So Steve Kerr is as culpable as anyone when it comes to Damian Lee, Juan Toscano Anderson not coming back, and the team deciding to go with this roster where youth was going to be an important part of it. Before he decided 5-10 games in, I changed my mind. I don't want to play the young guys. That has massive ramifications. It did have massive ramifications, resulting in the Warriors being the 6th seed and resulting in the Warriors losing in the second round of the playoffs. The reason why this season frustrates me so much is world championships are incredibly hard to attain. And the Warriors were in a position this year to repeat as world champions, and instead they blew it. In a year where you could have been a world champion, you opted not to develop players that were sorely needed for your postseason run. You opted not to play bigger players, thus putting more pressure on your smaller players. And that strategy failed miserably. And in a year where Stephen Curry could still be playing right now, competing for his 5th world title, instead, the Warriors are home. And a lot of that impetus of blame is placed on Steve Kerr for the decisions he made this year. When we come back, I'm going to talk about Draymond Green because his status is one of the most important variables for the Warriors this offseason. But first, I got to give some love to one of our relatively new sponsors, and that's Gametime, a terrific resource for tickets. Whether it's tickets to concerts, whether it's tickets to sporting events, Gametime is the app for you to find the cheapest tickets out there. And look, one of the best parts about Gametime is their low price guarantee, meaning if you find tickets on Gametime, you purchase those tickets, and then you find the same tickets in the same row and section from another seller, and those are priced lower than what you paid for through Gametime, Gametime is going to give you refund the difference. That's a low price guarantee. It's also really easy to use. Supply is fantastic. So snag the tickets that you want without the stress using Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price Guaranteed.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, it's the Bob Myers episode. I am going to break down why Bob Myers is so important and so fundamental to this team's success. As I got to yell at my dog, Bubba, Bubs, Bubba, Bubba, Bubs, 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 Bubba, Bubba. This is literally what I deal with on a daily. Bubba, Bubs. Sorry about that, folks. That is my dog being a little mischievous while I'm recording a show. So tomorrow will be the Bob Myers episode. And I'm not going to edit that out. I want you to see what goes on in my life. One of those being my precious English bulldog, who's still in his puppy stages of life, and it can be a little rambunctious. Steve Kerr talked about Draymond Green. And I'm happy that Steve Kerr recognizes just how important Draymond Green is to this dynasty. When the day comes, if the day comes, and I guess it's going to be a win at some point, when Draymond Green leaves, that will mark the end of this. He has been instrumental and fundamental to this dynasty. He's been as important as Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, because without him, you don't have the defense, you don't have the vocal leadership, you don't have the mental toughness, you don't have all the intangibles he brings offensively. And one thing that Draymond Green said that Mark Spears of ESPN reported immediately after the Game 6 loss is that Bob Myers will be fundamental to whether or not Draymond Green returns. Draymond Green has a player option next year for $27+ million. If Bob Myers announces he's not coming back, Draymond Green will not opt into that extension. He said so. He literally told Mark Spears that his decision to come back hinders largely on the status of Bob Myers. Sorry about that. So it's all going to come down in terms of Draymond and his decision to move forward on what Bob Myers does. So here is Steve Kerr talking about the importance of Draymond Green in terms of the dynasty.
Look, if Draymond's not back, we're not a championship contender. We know that. I mean, he's that important to winning and to who we are. So I absolutely want him back. He's a competitor. He's an incredible defensive player. We can check all those boxes, and he and I have built a really special relationship that has run the gamut. Over the years, we've had our share of run-ins, but we've been through so much. We really care about each other and work together well. He knows that he had a great season this year from a basketball perspective, but he knows that he also compromised things by what happened back in October. And so part of him coming back next year has to be about, rebuilding some of that trust and respect that he's earned here, for a long period of time. And one thing I love about Draymond is he's always brutally honest, and he can take that sort of critique because he knows it's the truth. So I want him back. I think we all want him back, and hopefully that's exactly what happens. And we get ready to make another run next year.
And thankfully, right after Game 6, Draymond publicly said that he wants to be a Golden State Warrior for life. And The Athletic reporting that the Warriors are negotiating with Draymond Green's representatives from Clutch in regards to a contract extension. But make no mistake, if Bob Myers leaves, Draymond Green is gone, and that alone is a huge reason why, if Bob Myers goes, so too does the dynasty, because the players trust Bob. Now, Steve Kerr and Draymond have, as Kerr alluded to, they themselves have an excellent relationship. They have an excellent working relationship. One of Draymond Green's biggest strengths is self-awareness. He's aware that he can be passionate sometimes. He's fully aware that his behavior sometimes does not fit exactly norms, whether we're speaking socially, societally, or in basketball. And so he's also very cognizant of the fact that he has a head coach who recognizes that Draymond Green doesn't exactly fit in your metaphorical box of your typical individual, particularly in the NBA, and that he has a head coach who works around that, because that coach, Steve Kerr, respects and values what Draymond Green brings to the table. I don't think there's a coincidence at all that Steve Kerr's experience with the Chicago Bulls, playing with Dennis Rodman, plays a large part into how he handles Draymond Green and how much he respects Draymond Green in terms of his role with the Golden State Warriors. But with that said, even though they both respect each other, they probably both love each other, the relationship between Kerr and Green is night and day different from the relationship between Bob Myers and Green. Draymond Green has a very strong affinity to Bob Myers that is not quite as strong with Steve Kerr. And perhaps to make it most evident, if Bob Myers goes, so too does Draymond Green. If Steve Kerr goes, but Myers stays, Draymond Green will stay. And that is the difference right there. Whereas Draymond Green will literally make a career decision based on the status of Bob Myers, that's not that level of closeness does not exist between Kerr and Draymond Green. I'm not saying they dislike each other, but it is very different and not as strong as the relationship between Draymond Green and Bob Myers, which is why, again, fundamentally, vitally important for Draymond Green to come back, and same with Bob Myers coming back. Draymond Green this year, by the way, had a solid season. Played 73 games, the most games he's played in a regular season since 2018. I'm sorry, since 2017. Averaged 31.5 minutes per game. He shot 30.5% from three. That was the highest since 2017. He averaged 8.5 points per game. That was the highest since 2018. Averaged 7.2 rebounds per game. And again, that number is below his 2015 through 17 highs. But again, you can't, given how small the Warriors are inside, you can't afford to lose those 7.2 rebounds per game. You can't afford to lose his 6.8 assists per game that he brought this year. So Draymond Green, besides all the stuff he does defensively, he shot 71.3% from the free throw line. He brings so much to the table. Averages 1 steal per game, averages just shy of 1 block per game at 0.8. There's no mistaking that Draymond Green is on the downside of his career, but fortunately, it's not a precipitous drop. It is a very slow plateau-like decline, and he's very much still a serviceable basketball player. And again, if he goes, so too does the dynasty, and let's really hope he comes back. Now, Klay Thompson, part of the core three that is no longer what they were, unfortunately. And this is part of the difficulty in terms of the Golden State Warriors moving forward, is we no longer have 3 players who can literally carry a team with a strong supporting cast to a world championship. Stephen Curry is still there. Draymond Green, sort of still there. Klay Thompson, not there. And Steve Kerr talked about that. Klay Thompson's decline is going to be tricky, and that's another reason why Bob Myers is vitally important to this team, because who else can have a conversation with Klay Thompson about taking a pay cut? That's what Klay Thompson is going to have to do if he wants to play with the Warriors beyond next season. He's going to make close to approximately $43 million next year in the final year of his contract, and he's a champion. He's a 4-time champion. He's one of the greatest players ever to play this game. Having that conversation with someone like Klay that, hey, your game is not where it was, not easy. He's not going to take it easily. And I don't know who can really deliver that message outside of Bob Myers. And Steve Kerr talks about Klay Thompson and what he thinks needs to happen moving forward with Klay. Here's Kerr.
I think Clay's second half of the season was fantastic. I know that things didn't end the way he had hoped in the playoffs, but I think there's a lot of things we can do as a team to help get better shots for each other next year that I think will help Clay. I think the biggest thing for Clay is to have a great offseason. At 34, 33, I think, with two major injuries behind him, this is a time where he's got to be more prepared than ever for the first day of training camp. Not only physically, handling the injuries and the strength and conditioning part of everything, but also understanding that as you get older, you've got to get better in areas you can improve upon. You can't rely on the same things you could rely on at 28 or 27. So there are areas where he can get better, and he's going to focus on those things this summer and come in and have a great year next year.
Yeah, and I am glad that Kerr brought up the fact that Clay had a very slow start this season, which was based largely on the fact that Clay could not exercise his normal routine that he normally does in the summer, which includes pickup basketball in Southern California. That's part of his routine, and professional athletes especially are creatures of habit. So when their routine is disrupted, it causes a chain reaction for every aspect of his life, and that happened to Clay. Again, very slow start to the season. We didn't even see him playing at the beginning of the season. And unfortunately, while he had great numbers, I think he had his highest scoring average in his career in the month of January. And those numbers stayed strong in February, March, April, although you did start to see a small decline in those preceding months. He had an awful postseason. There's just no way to sugarcoat that. And that's going to be an interesting conversation. What happens with Clay? I am glad again that Steve Kerr raised that point that Klay Thompson needs to do things a little different. He needs to come better prepared. His conditioning needs to be ready to go for training camp and not for the regular season like it was last year. So that's going to be an interesting part of all this. And again, I think the more important discussion to have with Clay, and this is where Steve Kerr is going to have to put his loyalty aside to do what's best for the team. And that is Klay Thompson is at a point in his career where he's going to have to start coming off the bench. He's no longer a starter. His defense is not good enough, and his shot does not fall like it used to. His 2-point numbers this year, particularly, is what struggled the most for Klay Thompson. Like he led the league in 3-pointers made, but if you look at his field goal percentage from 15 feet and inside, awful. Not good, not bad, awful. And that is one of the signs of a declining player, is shooting percentages going down, efficiency going down. Again, he's one of the greatest players in the, I'm sorry, well, he is one of the greatest players, but he's one of the greatest shooters in the history of this game. And so that's not just going to vanish, right? I mean, his 3-point shot is not going to just go away altogether. But as a playmaker, and that's where those 2-point field goals particularly come in, where he's not just being a catch and shoot player. For that number to decline the way it did is alarming, and it's a sign that he as a player is regressing. And the Warriors, that's one of the hard decisions they're going to have to make this year is, what do we do with Clay? I mean, we don't want to see him go. He was one of the most important parts of this dynasty. Still can contribute, obviously. He averaged over 21 points a game this year. But the Warriors cannot survive on empty stats, on empty points. And a lot of those points are empty now. The fact that he cannot create his own shot efficiently and consistently, those are problems. Klay Thompson as a sixth man would be fantastic. It would solve the Jordan Poole issue in case you do keep him, because Jordan Poole as a starter is night and day better than Jordan Poole, the bench player. But Klay Thompson, in my humble opinion, is now a bench player. He's a fantastic bench player. Again, he's your sixth man, and he would bolster your bench tremendously. But I don't think he's a starter anymore, and that's going to be one of the many hard discussions that the team's going to have during this offseason. I want to quickly shift gears to Jonathan Kuminga, a player who we've talked about a lot on this show. And real quick, I don't think I mentioned this yet, by the way, and I do apologize for that. Kylan Mills will be joining me Thursday and Friday this week. She was supposed to join me today, but her commitments at one of her many other jobs, just like me, unfortunately pulled her away last minute. She's down at San Jose State University today. But she will join me Thursday and Friday. One of those two shows will be an hour-long show. We're going to make both those shows live so you can engage with us. And obviously, a fresh perspective besides my own will be welcome for the audience of this program. So I just quickly want to mention that Kylan will be here Thursday and Friday this week. The Thursday program, I believe, will be a two-parter. So one of the shows will be long and fun. But again, shifting gears back to the matter at hand. And Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga is a player who, there's criticism of him that is completely and utterly invalid. What I mean by that is I hear people sometimes say that he's not a consistent shooter. He's not a great shooter. He doesn't have great handles. Every single criticism that I've heard about him has no basis in reality when it comes to statistics. And again, those criticisms are not something I share. I don't see those. I think like he was playing point guard in training camp last year in summer league. Look, he doesn't have point guard handles, but he doesn't have bad handles either. His shot, even though it looks kind of weird, I've compared it to Jimmy Chitwood, the protagonist in the movie Hoosiers, almost identical shooting form, damn near perfect shooting form. His shot's great. This season, he played 20.8 minutes per game in 67 games played. Now, if you're asking yourself, okay, 67 games out of 82, what happened to the other 15? He missed a few of those because of injuries. Most of those were DNPs. Absurd, inexcusable. Jonathan Kuminga this year averaged 9.9 points per game and 20.8 minutes per game. So if he was averaging 30 minutes per game, he'd be scoring 15 points a game. That's not bad for a second-year player who's 20 years old. He shot 52.5% from the field. That is good. That is very good. He shot 37% from three. That is great. His free throw percentage could use some improving, 65.2%. The rebounding numbers. Jonathan Kuminga, on yesterday's show, we played a soundbite where, or I don't know if I played that soundbite, but he also said in his exit interview that he wants to work on his rebounding. He wants to be a more complete player this offseason. He averaged, because that was, again, something that a lot of people love to criticize about him, but he still averaged 3.4 rebounds per game. If he played 30 minutes per game instead of 20, he'd be averaging close to 5 rebounds per game. That's good. That is a good enough. 5 rebounds per game is solid for a player who's a wing player. He's not a center. He's barely a power forward. He's a small forward. That's who he is as a player. And by nearly every metric, he has been exemplary. Yet we saw the vanishing act in the postseason. Just completely fell out of favor. Well, Steve Kerr went a little more into that in today's exit interview. And I was really happy he did. Here is Steve Kerr talking about what Jonathan Kuminga needs to do to get more playing time.
I think the biggest thing was with Wiggs and Gary in place again. It lessened the need for what JK's strength is right now, which is on-ball defense. So the best way for Jonathan, and I told him this, best way for him to get more playing time is to become a more versatile player. Where I look at every combination that we put out there as a puzzle. The puzzle has to fit. The more things you can do, the more easy it is to fit into a 5-man lineup. And so rebounding is a huge thing for JK. If he's going to be a great player in this league, he's got to rebound. A 4-man with that kind of size and athleticism, that's the next step. And continuing to work on all the things that he's working on already, the shooting and the ball handling and the court vision, understanding what's happening on the floor. It's all going to get better because he's so young and because he's willing to work. So you put all that together, and there's no reason why he can't come in and have a great season next year.
And I really hope that it works out and the Warriors keep him and the Warriors give him the opportunity. And this is where, Steve Kerr talks about the puzzle, trying to find what fits. Well, you did not put together a puzzle this year, coach. I mean, this is, this and the Kuminga thing was an issue in terms of Kerr's rigidity. Like he says he looks at Kuminga as a four. He looked at Kuminga as someone who played the same role as Wiggins and Gary Payne II. Well, think outside the box a little bit. Learn to play those guys together if you have to. Learn to play Kuminga in different roles if you have to, so that he can get on the court and contribute. His 6'8", 240-pound frame was sorely missing against a Los Angeles Lakers team who's destroying the Golden State Warriors on the interior. It was utterly inexcusable to not play Jonathan Kuminga this year. And I'm going to finish today's show with one final soundbite where Steve Kerr offers some perspective, given that the team did not reach their goal of winning a world championship. Here's Coach Steve Kerr.
For me, the way I look at this season is that sometimes losing can give you clarity in terms of where you need to be better. It probably would have been tough to walk in the first day of training camp this year and say, hey, we got to improve in this area or that area, and then the guys are looking at me like we just won the damn championship. It's a lot easier when you lose for everybody to look in the mirror, say what can we do better? What can I do better? What can we do better? So that's the job of the coaching staff this year. Really figure out where we can improve and find ways to teach those things, implement them in the summer, next training camp, and get better. For me,
well, if Kerr was watching this show, he wouldn't have had to lose in the playoffs to learn what the hell the team was doing wrong. You were losing all season, coach. You had the worst road record by defending world champion in modern NBA history. That's not enough losing? 44-38 wasn't enough losing? It took losing in the postseason for you to realize these things? That's the part that drives me crazy, but what are you going to do? Tomorrow will be the Bob Myers show. I'm going to present a case for why Bob Myers is the brains of this operation and why he is invaluable, why the dynasty leaves if Bob Myers leaves. That'll be tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. Kyla Mills is back, and she's going to join me. I've missed her. And all offseason, we're obviously going to be covering this Warriors team extensively. Again, this is the most interesting offseason in the history of this franchise. It's the first time the Warriors have been in a dynasty, and they're now facing the end of a dynasty. You're damn right. This is a big offseason, and we're here to cover it. Thank you very much for joining me as always. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRocho. You can follow the program on Twitter at LockedOnDubs.